Welcome to episode 87 of C3 Crystals, Cauldrons, and Cocktails. I'm River.
And I'm Wren.
And this week we will explore Knot Magick. Not magic.
Honestly.
Knot Magick.
Honestly.
What?
We've done this intro like 7 times. And every 7 times I've said that joke. No, it's just not funny anymore.
No.
It's not
funny anymore. Okay. But first, I want to know how you've been doing since you got done with school. The last episode came out on the day you graduated.
I guess I'm good.
You're still in a daze?
Yeah, it doesn't feel real. Like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I have another schedule to get to and like classes and everything. And I'm still looking for a job. I mean, looking is not the right word because I want a break. So I haven't really been looking.
You've sent out stuff, you told me.
Stuff. I'm just recently, in the past like couple of days, I haven't done anything.
Yeah. Well, your brain needs a little break.
Yeah. I don't want to work.
Well, I'm excited because you're here at my house today. We don't usually get to do this together. Usually we're on Zoom.
Yeah.
So, and we bought a new microphone, so hopefully this works.
Oh my God, this microphone.
We're going to post some bloopers, maybe on TikTok. I don't know, maybe on Patreon.
We told a joke. Oh my gosh, hold on, I'm yawning. I told a joke. I said we're 87 episodes in, and we still haven't figured out audio.
And it's true.
It's terrible.
It's very embarrassing.
It's awful. But we just haven't found that right, program or that right thing for us personally.
Well, and I don't know anything about the program. Like, we're using Voice Meter Banana as our recording, and that's supposed to be good. And then I bought this microphone.
It's
off
purple.
Of Amazon, and it's very pretty, which was the main reason. Plus, it looks like the drawing that our friend made of us for our logo. It looks just like that microphone, which is so cool to me. Except for this one's purple. But I have no idea what I was saying. Why are we talking about this?
I don't know. I'm tired.
Okay, what are we drinking? And as usual, when Wren and I are together, we've been drinking for a little bit.
We went out to eat, and I had a berry sangria. Oh, gosh, it was delicious. It was gone within 5 minutes.
Yeah, the waitress was like, do you need another
one? Yeah. I do.
Yeah, I had a Cosmo, but right now I'm drinking what I drank for Mother's Day. It's called the Enchanted Garden, and I love it. It was my Mother's Day drink, and I posted it on, I think, Facebook. And it's beautiful, and it is very easy. It's sparkling brut rosé, pamplemousse liqueur, which is grapefruit liqueur, fresh raspberries, fresh strawberries, fresh lemons, and I put all of that in a pitcher, and when you pour it into your drink, you add a little bit of club soda for that extra sparkle, and I absolutely love it, but it's not one of Wren's favorites.
It's all right.
She said it's not sweet enough.
It's not sweet enough, so just add a little, like, syrup, like, simple syrup, or you have, like, those Mio, like, water flavors, and you just squirt whatever fruit you want.
Those have an aftertaste to me, but the pamplemousse liqueur has the sweetness in it, so you could always add a little bit extra of that. It's too sweet if I add too much of that. Liqueurs are often sweet, but anyway, it's lovely. So I am having that, and it makes me feel springy and into summery because it's got all these fresh fruits in it. Okay, so anyway, and Wren decided she had enough of that, so she's made herself
ice cream
with the pecan liqueur on it.
It's delicious.
Yeah, she's loving that.
I had plenty of the Enchanted Garden this morning. This afternoon.
It might have been morning when we started. I don't know.
Supposed to let them know that. So I've moved on to dessert before dinner.
Dinner? I don't know that we'll be up to dinner.
I think so.
Our husbands are going to be going, oh my God.
Oh my God.
So let's start talking about Knot Magick, Knot. So what is it? Well, you've probably used knot magic without even realizing it. Have you ever tied a kid's shoelace, which you don't have children yet, but I've tied, a kid's shoelace while you're thinking about their safety as you do so. You're intent on making sure they aren't going to trip on it, that kind of thing. Or did you make friendship bracelets when you were a kid with your best friend? What about using a necktie or a hair tie or braiding your hair or even braiding your beard or knitting or crocheting? All of those are examples of knot magic.
Oh, that's cool. I used to knit when I was in high school.
I loved knitting. I just haven't for years. I thought you were the crocheter.
No, I never crocheted. I always knitted.
One of my friends was a crocheter. I don't remember who.
I knitted and I knitted. I
knitted with knots. Okay.
I knitted like a whole ton of scarves. Like I had a couple of scarves I had knitted myself.
That.
And then I knitted my dog a couple of things.
That's so cute.
She loved her little sweaters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knitted her, tried to knit
I was going to say,
sweaters.
That's way beyond my ability, man.
Yeah, basically what I had to do was I knitted a tube. And then I just cut out. Well, I didn't cut. I had to, weave around where I wanted her little paws to go.
See, and I bet while you were doing that, you were thinking about her and her safety and her warmth and all of that. That's magic,
well,
right
part
there.
of it was, my dog's going to love this. She's going to look so cute. And part of it was, God fucking damn it, I need to be done with this.
When it's been years since I've knitted, but I would be knitting happily along. I would be knitting happily along. And I would notice about 17 rows back, I had made an error, and you can see it plain as day. And then I'm like, oh God, I've got to undo 17 rows.
That's when you just keep going, and then when you go back and find it, and you just take a small piece of yarn and you just fix it.
Oh, well, that would have been nice to know. I just said fuck it and threw it in the, I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I haven't knitted in a long time. I have not got the patience for that. But basically, using cord and knots with intention is the root of knot magic. So what is a knot exactly? A knot is an intentional complication in cordage. I love that they called it a complication. It's a complication in cordage, which may be practical or decorative or both. Practical knots are classified by function, which include hitches, bends, loop knots, and splices. So like a hitch fastens a rope to another object, which obviously that's what a hitch is, and not in rope terms. A bend.
Is that why it's called getting hitched when you marry someone?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe so.
Ta-da!
A bend fastens two ends of rope to each other, and a loop knot is any knot that creates a loop, and a splice denotes any multi-stranded knot, including bends and loops. So it's a little bit more complicated than...
well, when you just said loop, a notification on your computer said, construction on this highway on loop.
East loop.
Yeah.
Eastbound.
Right as you said, loop.
Okay, so we're being listened to,
Loop, 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 loop.
Now I'm going to be getting, advertisements on Google
for your road construction nearby.
Okay, so a knot is a fastening made by tying a piece of rope, cord, or string. This tying can be done in an infinite number of different ways, and each way can hold a different purpose and strength. Knot magic requires a piece of string, twine, yarn, thread, ribbons, anything really. It could be pieces of fabric, anything that you have on hand. It doesn't have to be anything special, so it's wonderful for those of us who aren't super rich. We can't go out and buy all of our fancy dancy witchy stuff. We can use whatever we have in the house. Some witches use specific ribbons for their knot magic or string that they have specifically, set aside for their knot magic. Tying up animals and securing boats on water were required to keep them from being pulled away, like by the tide and that kind of thing. So the simple action of tying a knot, meaning to keep it from getting away, was something very important to people all across time, way in the past. Knots can be used to make containers. Think about macrame. Like the macrame plant holders and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so you can make these holders or containers out of knots, which can be used in really complex knot magic. Did you know, speaking of macrame, that in the 1600s, decorative macrame came to the English court of Queen Mary II?
Oh.
So it's been around for a long, long time.
You know, all I can think about from your Did You Knows now is that wine glasses are made out of titties.
That's a good one. That was a very good fact to know.
Yeah, that's all I can think about. Whenever I look at a wine glass, I'm like, that was a boob.
Yep. Yep, it was.
And then I told my husband, and he had the same reaction about the champagne glass as I did. He's like, that's a weird fucking titty. And I was like, yeah, you're right.
Helen of Troy was pointy boobied or something. I don't know. Okay, moving on. She's given me a look. I make hand fasting cords, which are knots meant for a hand fasting ceremony. It's a cord that I knot and braid. I do all kinds of different kinds of knots in it. And when I'm making it, my intent is for happiness for the couple, for, may they love each other forever, that kind of thing. So I've got a bunch of those, and tying the knot, like you were saying, getting hitched, tying the knot is often referred to as the union of a couple, which may refer to the history of knots being involved in wedding ceremonies. I thought that was pretty cool. So the history of knot magic. The use of knots in and of themselves goes back thousands of years. One article said that knots were used even before the wheel was ever invented.
I find that hard to believe.
I know, it's very interesting. But
if you make a knot into a circle, that's a wheel. That's a circle.
Yeah, but I don't know that they knew that they took that concept of a circle into making it a wheel that would move.
But if it rolls,
something.
then you would...
I don't know.
Okie dokie.
The oldest fossil records of ropes are from 13,000 BC. So that's about 15,000 to 17,000 years ago.
Did you hear, about the DNA that they found off of a tooth, a necklace tooth that was over 20,000 years old that had a Homo sapien and another Homo species?
No, I didn't hear that.
And she was it was a female, and she was a mix between two Homo species.
Interesting.
And so they interbred.
Yep.
Which was super cool, and was like, we date back thousands of years, 20,000 plus. And then there was another thing that was found, and they gathered DNA. It was 90,000 years old.
Oh my God.
DNA of
human
Homo.
Yeah.
Homo species.
Yeah. Yeah, because there were Homo sapiens, there were Homo other things.
There are a lot.
Yeah.
There's a whole branch.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. But isn't that cool?
That is the coolest thing.
90,000 years.
Well, that always makes me think of Lucy that we talked about.
Yeah.
But
it's also like...
That's crazy.
Like, where is all this information from that long ago?
Deteriorated. Like, the fact that they were able to find fossils of rope is amazing because rope deteriorates. So to find a piece of rope, it's a fossil of a piece of rope. The rope obviously deteriorated, but it was there long enough to create a fossil. 13,000 BC, so 15 to 17,000 years ago. That's just crazy. And then around 8,000 to 6,500 BC, people began to use knots to create garments from textiles. Before then, people wore animal clothing, animal skins.
Yeah.
And
animal clothing.
Didn't know animals wore clothes, but anyway, they made clothes by sewing animal skins together until they figured out how to make knots, and that you could make knots. The process of weaving is almost knot-like. Anyway, speaking of that, the Egyptians created a rope-making spindle around 4000 BC to help the weaving. In 218 BC, the Romans used rope to sling bolts at their enemies, during the Second Punic War. And then Chinese knotting has been around since the Tang and Song dynasties, which were about 960 to 1279 AD. And the decorative Chinese knotting later became even more popular in the Ming dynasty. And just intricate, beautiful, ornate knots that just got better and better as time went on. And then as far as magic goes, midwives used... She just took away my notes, y'all.
I panicked and I clicked the wrong button.
Okay, so I can see my notes again now. Midwives used knot magic in the past.
I didn't even see what I wanted to see.
Well, what is it that you're looking for?
Recording.
Oh, that would suck if we had been saying all this stuff and we weren't even recording. Oh, my Lord. Okay. If a birth was difficult back in the day, all types of knots in the home were untied and all the women let their hair down. And this was supposed to make the body of the mother loosen all of its knots as well and help the birth easier. Isn't that the coolest thing? So as soon as the baby was born, the umbilical cord was cut and tied. And at the same time, the midwife would say a little prayer or blessing so that the future, for the future health and happiness of the baby as they tied the knot in the umbilical cord. So you'll never look at a belly button the same way. And then, in some cultures, women couldn't wear their hair in braids. They couldn't knot their hair into braids until they reached, quote, womanhood.
That's interesting.
Yeah, which actually it reminds me of the Wheel of Time. I think you've not read that. I think I've talked about it before.
Not read that.
Oh, my Lord.
There's a lot of jokes that
a lot of knot jokes.
Yeah.
But Robert Jordan wrote that series, The Wheel of Time, and there were cultures that had to wait until they were old enough to marry to be able to put their hair in braids. And so it was a status thing. You're a woman now. You can be courted and married.
Okay.
The bowline knot was the most popular knot used for tying up boats, and it's been dated all the way back to the Egyptian times too, from ships that we actually just recently excavated. Okay, so did you know? And this I didn't know, but a lot of you all probably did. And you know how in ship terms they describe a ship's speed as knots? He's going 10 knots.
Like with clicks.
Yes.
Right.
So the way this came about, it was in the late 16th century. Sailors had begun using this log. It was like a triangle-shaped log to measure speed. And they would have knots tied at uniform intervals on this length of rope. And then the other end was tied to this little triangle piece of wood called a chip. They would toss the chip into the water, and it's attached to the rope with all these knots in it. And as the boat goes, they would let it unfold. That's not the right word, but let it go out into the water behind them. And they would count the number of knots that went in a specific length of time. Back then they had to use hourglasses because they didn't have watches and that kind of thing. And then they would count the number of knots and calculate the vessel of speed. So a knot came to mean 1 nautical mile per hour.
Oh.
So a ship traveling at 15 knots would be going 15 nautical miles per hour. And a knot equates to 1.15 miles per hour. Or 1.85 kilometers per hour.
That's interesting.
Isn't that the coolest thing? I heard of that.
Yeah, I heard of it, but I never looked into it.
Yeah,
Why is it called a knot?
Never knew that. And knot magic has also been traditionally used by sailors to bind winds. And untying the knot would stir up a wind. So, it was always a really dangerous and possibly deadly thing when there was no wind out there to sail with. You would be just stranded in the middle of the ocean, and you only had a set number of supplies. And so you would untie a knot to bring the wind. And generally 3 knots were used. The first untied would cause a gentle wind. The second would be a strong wind, and the third could release a hurricane.
Oh.
Now, one of the most famous knots that you may or may not have heard of. Oh boy, tried to make a joke and choked on my own spit. Okay, so in 333 BCE, Alexander the Great of Macedonia occupied Gordium, which was the capital of Phrygia, which is in modern-day Turkey. So in that city, he came across this wagon, and its yoke was secured by what was later described by a Roman author as being several knots, all so tightly entangled that it was impossible to see how they were fastened. And according to the legend of this city, whoever could unravel that knot would become the leader of Asia. So the story says that Alexander struggled with this tangled rope for a while without success, and finally he drew out his sword and whacked the knot apart. And that made him ruler of that city because he undid the knot.
But
So
isn't that cheating if you cut it open?
good question. So the Nordian knot fable is passed into our language to describe any problem that is seemingly impossible to solve. Cutting the Gordian knot describes any creative or unusual way of solving a difficult puzzle.
That's cheating.
Which it reminds me of Indiana Jones. I think it was the very first Indiana Jones. I haven't watched those in years, but they're so good. But that one where the dude pulls out his knife and he's doing all these fancy things and Indiana pulls out his gun and shoots him. What Indiana did, the handling of that scenario would be called cutting the Gordian knot because he pulled out the gun and just shot him and took care of that.
Interesting.
And technically, yes, that could be cheating because the other guy had a knife, and I suppose Indiana should have fought with a knife too, but he pulled out a gun and took care of that problem. So, yeah, that's a very fascinating thing. And did you know that the knot of Hercules, which is the reef knot or a square knot, which the square knot is the one I use all the time, is said to have great healing powers?
Mm-hmm.
So if you bandage someone, like you get hurt in the arm and someone puts a bandage around you and they tie it with a square knot, it's said to heal faster.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's the healing of knot magic. Knots are actually essential in medicine, especially nowadays. We have suturing of the body after surgery. We got stitches. You had told me a story about stitches that you had to have on your lip or something. And, they had to...
they were dissolved, right?
Oh, did they? I don't
know.
You told me the story.
I know, but I can't remember.
You were salty about your sister having caused it.
Yeah, my sister threw a chess piece at my face when I was like 11. Because I was being nasty. I was like, I have the TV remote. And she had a marble, like one of my parents' marble chess pieces. She chucked it at my face and hit me so hard it had sliced through my upper lip. And I had to get stitches. Now, I can't remember if I had to go in and get them taken out or not, or if they were dissolvable.
I have no idea. Nowadays, aren't most of them dissolvable?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I might have had to go get them taken out because I only needed 2 stitches. It was like a small little cut, but it went all the way through my lip. Oh gosh, it was terrible. I thought she had broken my nose because like the top of the chess piece, like the ball, it was one of the bishops.
You're actually probably very lucky that she didn't get you in any other part of your face.
Yeah, I think so. And so like I thought she broke my nose because there was blood because I had like instantly, put my hand to my face to hold my face, pull my hand back and there's blood and I'm like 11, 12 max. And I'm panicking. I go to my mom and my mom's like, it was Halloween, let me tell you. It was Halloween day. My mom is prepping all this food and everything because she throws a big party for like the neighbors and everything. And so she looks at me, she's like, I'm going to go take a shower. And I'm over here bleeding from my face. And I go into the mirror and I spread my lip literally open and I can see my teeth all the way through. Yeah. Imagine a 11, 12-year-old doing this.
Oh, my Lord.
And having that trauma. And, of course, my little sister was in trouble. She was crying all the way in her room because she had felt terrible. And, obviously, she was in trouble. So my parents grounded her. And she was, like, crying in the bedroom. I'm over here crying because I have a hole in my face.
Was she crying because she got grounded or was she crying because she hurt her sister?
Probably both. And so, like, my mom's in the shower. I go to my mom. I'm like, Mom, I can see my tooth through my lip. And my mom was in the shower. She was like, great. And then we ended up going to,
emergency room or whatever.
Room. But I don't think they were dissolvable. I think I actually remember having to go in and I do remember I could feel them pulling out the stitches.
But if not for suturing and knot tying,
you
would have a hole in your mouth right now.
I mean, I think if no. I wouldn't have a hole in my mouth because my body would naturally heal, but the scar would be terrible. And now I do have a small scar, but it's like very minimal. You can't really see it. On some days, there are days where it's more prominent than others. I don't know why. It just is. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I have a scar on my lip.
Well, I mean, even before
oh my gosh.
Go ahead.
It was Halloween. My little sister had also stabbed me in the eye with her freakishly long fingernails earlier that day. And so while we were at the doctor's, we just went ahead and did the like they were glow in the dark eye drops.
Oh, probably to check to make sure that she hadn't cut your eye or something.
And so everything checked out, but it was Halloween, so I still went trick-or-treating, so I had 2 stitches on my upper lip and an eyeball that was glowing in the dark.
You didn't need a costume that night.
Exactly. Oh, gosh, that was terrible. But yeah, the knot. Sorry.
But I mean, think about in medicine, even before they learned how to properly suture, like of course, and who knows, 100 years from now, they're going to look at the sutures we do now and go, oh,
those
God.
are awful. You butchered people.
But, that's how people survived back in wars. They had to sew parts of you back together,
Yeah, no, I'm watching this show right now, Orville. The Orville. It's like that a space exploration type of thing. It's like funny, dry humor type of thing. And it's really cool, like what they came up with, because they're like very advanced. They're like in 2400, for like 300, 400 years in the future.
Is it like a spoof off of Star Trek or
sort of?
I haven't seen it.
It's very good. Like it's not anything like.
It's not goofy.
No. Okay. I mean, there's some slapsticky humor, but overall the general plot of the story and the show is very good. And so, they encounter civilizations on planets that have yet to try to make contact with anybody outside. And so they always try to go and land but not be seen. And so, a little girl fell in one of the episodes and like sliced her head open. So the person who saw it went over there with this really cool, like it looks like a gun type of thing, like a radar, like
a little tricorder
handheld thingy, but it was a healing thing.
Okay.
And so she and it completely healed it completely. It was like a little laser, it went wow, 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 and it healed completely. So like our stitches and our of stuff.
They would think that's brutality.
But also at the same time, it's like you have to understand we didn't have that technology like that we will have in the future to be able to do that. So therefore, we learned from that and now we know how to make it better. Instead we're like, oh man, you butchered those people. It was like we butchered those people and learned better, so now we won't do that again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and the same idea of sewing people up back in the Viking days is still the same thing we do now, just we have better materials to do it with and better techniques.
Yeah.
So also ropes and knots are really important in the theater world. Theater technicians use knots to bring down those large curtains and to raise the props and to move props and that kind of thing. So rope work is very important in the theater. And it also, because they secure the props, then the actors don't have to be terrified when they're on, oh God, is this thing going to fall on me? So knots are super important in the theater world. And given how important knots have been all along, from the suturing to the holding the boats in place to keeping animals from wandering off, all of those things, it's no wonder that knots have always been associated with magic. Now, there is in the past something called the witch's knot, and I don't know how to describe it.
It's a circle with a woo, woo, woo.
That's about how I would describe it too. It's got 4 oval loops and then a circle, and they call it Vesica Pisces, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Piscis, and I'm sure Greg is going, oh my God, and he will give us an email that tells us all about it. But it has these, yes, we do. We really appreciate it. I'm not joking. It has 4 interlocking shapes, and this dates back to the Middle Ages.
Like I said, it's a circle with a woo.
It really is. Four woos. And it's known for its protective qualities because it can be drawn with a continuous line without having to pick your pen up off the paper. So it's meant as something that's unbreakable.
Oh, okay.
So centuries ago, people used to carve the witch's knot into wood and then color it green or red and hang it above doorways to prevent negative energies or bad people from coming into their homes. It is also used, it used to be tied on a horse bridles or wire wrapped into jewelry for carry protection.
Oh.
And it is said that Scottish and Scandinavian witches used to give these knots to sailors to help keep them alive and safe at sea. So also the witch's knot was used as a weather control in ancient Scotland, Ireland, and the Scandinavian countries. Witches used to sing songs and lullabies to the winds as they bound these knots. And the winds would stop once they finished their spells, and the rope would be firmly bound, and that wind would be held within these knots. And then later, they would sell these to the sailors for them to unbind when they became stranded, with no wind. Yeah, very interesting. It was also believed that the witch's knot could either stop or prevent blood. So for this, the witches used red threads or ropes that they would bind either around the neck of a man or around the left wrist or little finger of a man to keep them safe. Which makes me think, did you know?
Okay.
In medieval times, when jousting, a knight would ask for a favor from the lady of his choice. And this was often ribbons that were knotted so that they would fit over the tip of his lance or that he could attach to his clothing. And this was for the luck of that contestant. And then also speaking of jousting, Henry VIII, I may have told you all this before. I feel like I've talked about him before. He loved jousting. Almost to the point where he got killed, almost got killed several times.
He got killed several times and brought back to life, with the sci-fi healing, instruments that wow, but we forgot all about that. So now we're back in the dark ages.
So it almost killed him several times, and he finally suffered brain damage in 1536, which finally ended his jousting career. And some think that might be why his tyranny happened later in life, was from his brain damage from jousting.
There is a lot of history on serial killers and murderers and blah, blah, blah because of brain injuries. Whether at a young age or later in life, they have a brain injury and then something happens and
their mom dropped them on the head and they went and...
my mom dropped me on my head.
No way.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Sorry, Mom.
Just kidding.
Wow.
Just kidding. Okay, so how can we use knots in modern magic? So first, you need to know what the plan is for this spell. What's your intent? As we've said many, many, many times before, your intent is what makes a spell come to fruition. So you've got to take ample time to set your intent and focus, or the spell might not work. Cleanse your rope, cord, or ribbon. I like to use crafting cordage. I make my hand-fasting cords out of ribbon, crafting ribbon, but I like to work with, I don't know if it's leather. It's leather-like. I love to work with leather-like for doing my knots. It comes in all kinds of colors and thicknesses, and it's small enough that you can put beads on it. The eye of the bead is small enough, is big enough that it will go through it. So you can knot beads into it. And then depending on your spell, think about what color you need to work with for your intent. We've done the color magic episodes before. I think episode 62, if you want to go back and
I don't know.
Listen to that one.
Like I said, we're 87 episodes in and we are still not experienced.
Yeah, we still don't know what the hell we're doing. But you can also use white as a generic color, just like you can use white candles as a generic color. The witch's ladder, of course, is something I need to talk about as far as knot spells go. Witch's ladder is similar to a rosary in that it is a tool for meditation and ritual in which different colors are used as symbols for your intent. So it can also be used as a counting tool, because in some spell workings, there is a need to repeat the working a particular number of times. You can use the ladder to help keep track of your count. While you're trying to concentrate on the words of your spell, you can be counting the beads or the feathers or whatever it is that you've put into your witch's ladder. I make witch beads that can be used as witch's ladders for spell use. And if you want to check out my Etsy store, I'm working on making more stuff all the time. And generally in a witch's ladder, there are 9 knots. So to make one, you can make your own. You don't have to go and buy it. You can make it. You'll need yarn or cord or ribbon in 3 different colors, 9 items that are in similar property to each other, but in different colors, like 9 beads or 9 shells, 9 buttons, anything that you want to be able to weave into your ladder. You gather the 3 equal lengths of cords. Basically, you're going to braid them. You tie the ends of the 3 pieces together in a knot, and that's your starting point. And then you begin braiding the yarn together. And you tie your beads or feathers or whatever it is into place as you go with a sturdy knot. And then you braid some more. And here's the traditional chant that everybody knows that goes with making a witch's ladder. And I think we talked about this in another episode, but I don't remember which one. By knot of 1, the spell's begun. By knot of 2, the magics come true. By knot of 3, so shall it be. By knot of 4, this power is stored. By knot of 5, my will shall drive. By knot of 6, the spell I fix. By knot of 7, the future I leaven. By knot of 8, my will be fate. By knot of 9, what is done is mine. And as these beads are all tied into your knots, you focus your intent and goal. And as you get to the final and 9th knot, all of your energy should be directed onto the cords, the knots, and the beads. And this is a literal storage unit for your spell. Energy is actually stored within this witch's ladder. And you can hang it up. You can tie the ends together to form a circle. I actually, when I make mine, I don't do a traditional witch's ladder. I like the more prayer bead look, even though I don't believe in deities much. It's like I'll have 9 beads, or I'll have 3 sets of beads adding up to 9 with something in between them, and I do it with chain. I enjoy using chain, kind of like a rosary. So, and I do like using beads too, but you really honestly can do anything that you want to. So you don't have to be super rich and have to go out and buy whatever. And then speaking of numbers, you can actually use any number of knots. It doesn't have to be the traditional 9. It can be whatever. Like one of our listeners, Jessica, she uses her life number that we talked about in our numerology episode. She says she uses her life number for the number of times that she says her spells and chants and things like that. That number is very important in her magic. And you can use it that way if you're making a witch's ladder as well. So you can also use knot spells as binding spells. That is probably the most common use of a knot spell, which makes sense.
Like the knot tying spells with the candles and they burn the flame.
There, there's cord cutting spells and that kind of thing too. So binding spells. Sorry, lost my train of thought. I finished my drink and
now you're having a good time.
Wondering where the picture is so I can get some more. But anyway. Won't do that to you all. If a person has some negative traits that maybe, like a self-binding spell, they want to bind their bad habits, that kind of thing. You can tie a knot around a talisman or an effigy or a charm that represents that individual. And that would help them bind that particular bad habit that they're wanting to get rid of. One site that I came across had an example. And for this spell, you take a symbol of whatever or whomever it is that you feel is generating negativity in your life, and you tie it securely with a knot using the first line of the following incantation, which I'll read in a minute. And then you make 3 more knots as you go. So the first knot, you say, I bind you, and then whoever it is, my joy you will no longer take. Second knot, I banish, name of the person, from my mind and my life. I claim freedom from strife. The third knot, I cast out that person's name. On the knot of 3, bring only harmony to me. And the fourth knot, I expel the person's name with this magic charm. Now protect me from all harm. Something simple. I think most spells are basically individual. A lot of people want to say, well, what's the spell for this? Well, it's whatever you make it, because it's your intent and what works for you.
Yeah.
But I am all for going to the internet to find a starting point.
Ideas.
Yes. To help you shape in your mind what it is that you're looking for. But you keep this in a safe space. If you feel like the negativity from that person or situation is coming back again, you release one of the knots and you repeat the line of the incantation associated with it. But you never, never, never undo that first knot. That should always remain firmly in place. That's the binding spot. But you can retie all of the other knots up to that point. And you just keep it in a safe place and redo as necessary. And today, the witch's knot that I was talking about, the woo, woo, woo that we were talking about, it is often used as a personal symbol of power and protection by many Wiccans and Gaelic pagans. Many pagans use this symbol as an insignia to represent their entire magical persona and alter ego. It's a very important symbol to a lot of people. This is thanks to the fact of its protective properties. It is firmly and vastly believed that it is a very strong ward against all kinds of misfortune and evil, especially psychic vampires and ill-wishers who tend to infiltrate the household of modern pagans. Now, we're going to be doing an episode later for our After Dark on chaos magic. And this reminds me a little bit of that topic, in that chaos magic believes that once something is used, if you use it more than once, it no longer necessarily works. And so I wonder, you know how hackers hack into our computers all the time? If people are using this witch's knot as a protective property, are there witch hackers out there that can hack against it? Because
Probably.
I would think there would be. So that's something to keep in mind. Cooperation spells. Knot spells are often used as cooperation. And think about it. I mean, if you braid several strands together, you're uniting them into cooperation. So you can use this as a tool or a spell to improve cooperation. And the goal is that you assign each person per knot as you go. So as long as they're kept together, once you do these knots, then they should cooperate with each other. If you're having trouble, in your workplace and you've got subordinates that will not work together, you can do this cooperation spell, assign each of your employees a strand as you knot them, and hopefully they'll work together well after that. Knot spells have been used to cure sickness. You can take, and this is one I found online that you can change as you need to, but you take an 8-inch length of cord, pencil and paper, and a container of salt. You mark the cord 6 times at equidistant points. You take a few deep breaths and visualize your energy connecting to the earth. Say the following words 6 times and tie a knot in the cord every time you say these words. Sickness, no one bids you stay. It's time for you to fade away. Through these knots, I bid you leave. By these words, which I do weave. And then you place the cord into a container of salt, which is a symbolic way to bury the sickness in the earth. And you create a seal for the container with the above incantation written on paper. And then this says you throw the container away, which I don't know because I never know where trash is going to end up. Another suggestion was to put it into a running stream because running water helps move things on as well. Another wellness spell. For this spell, you need a length of red cord enough that you can tie 5 knots in it. You'll also need peppermint oil or tea. Sprinkle the mint onto each knot after you tie it, saying, sickness cannot come my way, only health and wholeness stay. With these knots I bid myself sound, in these knots my magic bound. And then if you feel like you're starting to get sick, you can undo a knot, just like you could the one I talked about before. And if severe conditions come on, you can release 2 or 3 knots, but never undo that very first one, because that's the seed, and you can recharge your spell with the other ones. You can also put oil drops, herbs, powders, or scents on each knot, depending on your intent. I feel like the more complex the knot, the more intent you put into it, and that might make it a stronger spell. I didn't find anything online that said that, but to me, that's just logical.
Y'all better study up on your types of knots.
Right. Now I want to go buy knot books.
Yeah, you'd be ready to be a fisher.
And then, I think simply by the virtue of the time it takes to do a more complicated knot, you've had more time to focus and put your energies into it. And then think about making bracelets or anklets with knots. Wear an anklet that have knots on it to help give you speed or stability. A bracelet maybe for strength. Knot earrings. can be made with intent, maybe for memory spells or hearing or
Mhm.
comprehension.
You need the hearing one.
I know it. I'm deaf as a stone. Knitting and crocheting are knots as well, as we talked about. And did you know knitting was first thought of as being a predominantly male thing?
Nuh-uh.
Yes, the first knitting union was founded in Paris in 1527, and no women were allowed in the guild.
Wow.
Which is so funny because nowadays you think of it
as
being women's work, so to speak. But I actually think knitting and crocheting would be a great way to work knot magic.
Mm-hmm.
Each stitch is a knot.
Yeah.
So that's the intent that could go into it. It might be too much to be able to, because when I used to knit, I would be watching TV or whatever. I'm not concentrating
it's so
on my
knots.
yourself.
Yeah. Something. You keep your hands busy.
But I think if you mean for it to be magic, you've got to put your intent, you've got to be paying attention. Mm-hmm. So it may be that.
I mean, embroidery could be a type of.
Oh, yeah. I didn't think about embroidery. That's 100% knot spells. 100%. And then one website I came across was very cool. It was saying that knitting is definitely a witchy craft. It says knitting is a spiritual craft. It gives witches many gifts. We gain patience and perseverance while learning to make these stitches. Knitting can also teach the value of free will and making mistakes. Our mistakes are those that we truly own, and we have the power to fix them, live with them, or embrace them. So like you were talking about, I might go back my 17 rows and fix it, but you can embrace it and live with it as well.
That's what I do, because you only live one life, and I'm not going to go back fixing on all my mistakes.
Witches can also use knitting as a part of their everyday meditation practice. Mm-hmm. Talking about, doing something that keeps your mind, sometimes like when we're driving, it frees our mind to do other things because that one part of us is concentrating on driving. Yeah. Same thing with knitting. It frees our mind to go and do other things. You can use knitting to connect to deities, especially creative ones or inspirational ones. Witches can commune with them or invoke them, ask their blessing for a particular project. Knitting can also be used in spellcraft and magic. Since knitting is a repetitive exercise, it has the potential to allow the crafter to change consciousness. This change in consciousness can help aid the witch in magic by putting us in the right state of mind to cast spells. So just picking up the needles can help you shift your mind towards that space that you're in when you craft, mm-hmm. and you can use that space to cast your spells. Think about the colors when you're knitting or crocheting or embroidering. Yeah. Red for a boost of energy, blue for, helping you fall asleep, pink for love and affection, all of that kind of thing. Black is a protective color. It's great for a purse or a bag. Plus it matches everything. I love black. Adding a bit of energy and magic can make a beautiful handmade gift even more special. A lot of us witches that like to do the creative stuff give handmade gifts as gifts. Mm-hmm. And we can imbue our power and magic into those gifts. So be creative. There's so many things that you can do. You can knit all kinds, altar cloths even, Yeah. One witch says to be mindful of the ingredients of the ropes, yarns, etc. that we choose. Some these days are purely synthetic and may not degrade, may not be good for the environment. Mm-hmm. So just, and that may actually work against what you're hoping to produce with your spell. So be aware of the tools that you use and the ingredients that you use. And I feel like knot spells are a great and easy and an inexpensive form of magic. And they're super quick too. The tying of the knot itself is the binding of the magic. So very quick spell. I'm going to have to try some of these for sure. I mean, I do a lot of hand fasting cords, but I'm going to have to expand maybe into my more witchy meditation beads, that kind of thing. But that's all we've got for this episode. Do you want to do the outro, or do you want me to do the outro?
Sure, I can do it.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you for listening. Please check out our website at www.c3witchypodcast.com. There you can find our links to our social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I know that we've both been working on getting out TikTok videos, River more than me recently, so you should go check those out. They're actually
but she's
really
done
good.
with school now, so be on the lookout for her stuff too.
Yeah. Also on our website, you can find buttons to take you all around our page where you can find merch and blah, blah, blah. But also, most importantly, our Buzzsprout and Patreon pages. This is where you can support us. On Patreon, you can get, all of our After Dark episodes, as well as like fun witchy to-do list, journal pages, recipes, spells,
all kinds of
etc.
things. Yeah.
And then on our Buzzsprout, you just get access to our After Dark episodes, but you can listen to it on the platform that you listen to our podcast.
Right. It
So
makes
Spotify,
it much easier.
Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, whatever it may be. I think that's it. So
yeah, thank you to our existing supporters. We just got a new one. Thank you. You guys are amazing.
Oh yeah, and a little sneak peek in our episode next week. It's from somebody who requested it. We are doing witchy location.
Yeah, I'm very excited, and Wren and I are thinking, although our husbands probably will say no, but we want to go and travel to some of these places.
Love to go to some of these places, probably starting out more closer.
Local.
Yeah. And then working our way out. But I think that would be so much fun. So stay tuned for that next week. Oh, and it also helps if you guys leave us reviews. This is a great way for us to get noticed, a great way for us to get the word out for us, because
I'm still waiting for us to make it onto some of these top 10 witchy podcast lists. We haven't made it yet.
Our name out there. I know we make great content and we put out things that not a lot of people like. Who talks about not magic? That's something that, as me, a stereotypical like witch who's always busy, doesn't even think about. I don't even think about these. So I wouldn't even think about this unless if I had a podcast to listen and inform me on this. So please help us get our name out there. We would love to, go make this our full-time job one day.
Wouldn't that be great?
It would be fantastic.
We would love to travel around the world visiting all of you guys.
Yes, of course.
But we'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back.
And until then, stay witchy.
Woo!